Hey there, guys. Have you ever had a passage in the Bible that almost every time you heard somebody teach it, you saw that they were wrong? I mean, they totally missed what was being said. Well, today's story has been one of those passages for me. Very few times have I ever heard somebody teach or preach this passage and get it correct. And I can prove that from the story. So, join us today as we look into God's Word. So, in our story today, continuing what we started earlier in the week, Jesus has just got through saying that not everybody who says, Lord, Lord, is going to go to heaven, but rather the one who does the will of his Father who is in heaven. And then he says after that, there are many who are not going to go to heaven, but they're going to be surprised, right? And so here is the rest of our story from God's Word. Jesus said, the one who hears these words of mine and does them is like the man who built his house on the rock. And the rains fell, the floods came, and the wind blew and beat against that house. But it stood because it was built on the rock. The one who hears these words of mine and doesn't do them is like the foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rains fell, the floods came, the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell. And great was the fall of that house. And that's our story from God's Word. So, let me ask you a question. Don't put it down anywhere because I don't want to do anything to embarrass you. But I'm curious, in this story, what is it that the Lord is saying is the foundation for the wise man? The one who hears these words of mine and does them. Yeah. So, if somebody does something that somebody has asked them to do, what do we call that? Exactly. We call it obedience. So what do we learn about Jesus' expectation? We talked earlier about how he was doing this long teaching in the Sermon on the Mount. So was this for head knowledge? Based on what he says here with the wise man, what is his expectation for what the people have heard? Yeah, that he's going to do it, or that they are going to do what they've heard. The one who hears these words of mine and does them is like the wise man who builds his house on the rock. It's been amazing. In this story, I've heard that the Bible is the rock, faith is the rock, Jesus is the rock. But clearly, what does the story say? Yeah, the one who hears these words of mine and does them. But the foolish man, what is it he does? He's the one who, he hears but he doesn't do. Is like the man who builds his house on what? Yeah, on the sand. So I'm curious. And do they go through different, these two guys, the wise man and the foolish man, do they go through different experiences or the same experiences? Yeah, it's the same. The rains fell, the floods came, the wind blew against that house. So I wonder, what might that tell us about those that follow Christ? Does he say the one who builds his house on the rock, that he's going to get special blessings and ease of life? What happens to the one who builds his house on the rock? Yeah, the rains fell and the floods came and the wind blew and beat against the house. But wait a minute, isn't that the same thing that happened to the foolish man? But if the wise man is doing the things of God, I mean, doesn't it seem like his life should be easy? And Jesus have a choice here in the story he uses to teach? I mean, couldn't he say the wise man who hears these words of mine and does them, his life is going to be smooth and steady? Could he have said that? But instead, he said the one who hears is still going to have the rains and the floods and the wind, the storms. I wonder if that might say anything about, what happens in everybody's life. Right? I mean, did everybody have difficult times? But that person that hears and does what God says, what's different for him than for the foolish man who builds his house on the sand? Yeah, his house stands. They go through the same storms, but his house stands. I wonder, might that tell us anything about the blessing of obedience? What do you see there? I'd love to see it in the comments section. I'd like to hear your comments there. And it's interesting to me, the foolish man who builds his house on the sand, go through the same storms, but the house fell, and not only did it fall, but what was it? Yeah, great was its fall. I wonder if that might tell us anything about the results of disobedience. I mean, what do you see there? Yeah, I mean, today, do people that obey God's word, do they still have storms that come in their lives? Yeah, we do, right? I mean, it's just part of life. But I wonder, does obedience to God give us the strength, give us the foundation, I guess is a better word, to be able to stand firm even in the midst of difficult times? Yeah. I wonder for some of you, if you've been through difficult times, maybe, times you didn't think you'd be able to withstand, but because of your relationship with the Lord, you were able to stand firm. I'd love to hear some of those testimonies. I was listening to a book the other day, and they were talking about the fact that, every great revival has had a series of testimonies that have been shared, that God has used what he's done in the lives of others to encourage those who maybe hadn't heard. And so I would love to hear some of your testimonies there. I'd also wonder, how might this story help you in your personal walk in the future? What is it in your life that you need to obey from God's word? I'd love to hear those things as well. Well, this story is in Matthew chapter 7, the very last part of the chapter. We still have one verse to deal with. But if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, we'd love to have you do so. I'm going to try to do one more video tomorrow, since I've kind of shortened you this week. I'm going to try to give you a little bonus video for that last verse. But until the next time, keep on telling those Bible stories.